What was the last movie you saw and thought, man, the book was so much better? What made you say that? Did the movie even try to communicate the same message as the book? Or did it contradict what it stood for through the creative license it took? Well, whether it's pulling from a book, comic, video game, TV show, stage play, or older movie, there are varying degrees of faithfulness a film adaptation can hold. Today, I'm talking about the 7 levels of movie adaptation. This has nothing to do with quality, it's strictly about faithfulness to the source material. Be sure to watch till the end so you can see where your favorite and least favorite movies land on this scale. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive right in. Level 1 adaptations are the cinematic equivalents of the Ship of Theseus. These movies share the same title and genre as their predecessors, in addition to some vague iconography, but they diverge in both message and concept. Often, this is what happens when studios care about the money they can make off of an IP's recognition, but not about why people cared for that IP in the first place. In some cases of Level 1 adaptations, different aesthetical elements of the source material can survive to the finished product. A studio might like the visual of a city-leveling dinosaur, a blonde space barbarian, or a team of 4 superpowered scientists. But if Godzilla loses his nuclear war symbolism, He-Man loses his tender core, and the Fantastic Four treat each other more like friendly co-workers than an authentic family, can you really call these adaptations same concept? As I said in the intro though, this is about faithfulness, not about quality. That being said, there are 2 Level 1 adaptations that I'd actually consider really good movies. Big Hero 6 takes the same title, certain character names, and genre placement from the Marvel comics it's based on, but so much of this movie's distinct DNA, including the San Francisco setting, unique team dynamic, and powerful themes of grief, originate from the filmmakers themselves. The same goes for my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, Django Unchained. It shares a main character name, theme song, and subgenre as the Django film from 1966. But while Sergio Corbucci's Django is more of a sadistic and nihilistic approach on the typical bounty hunter protagonist, Tarantino's Django is a meditation on vengeance that forces its protagonist to rise above the corrupt system of Southern slavery. Big Hero 6 and Django Unchained represent their respective namesakes so little, it's easy to mistake them for original IP, but that doesn't hold them back from being outstanding works of cinema. But as for the other 99.9% of movies that belong in this category, it's just studios attaching names of popular franchises to their generic ideas so they can sell more tickets. And as you can imagine, that rarely works. Level 2 adaptations function like contradicting answers to the same question. This is where an adaptation will take the same premise as its namesake, but use it to teach a different lesson. Often, this can come off as traitorous in nature. Batman vs. Superman draws a lot of conflict and scene ideas from Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman, but by completely reshaping the moral frameworks of these characters, Zack Snyder abandons the entire thematic subtext of those works. But other times, this form of adaptation can make for some of the best movies ever made. Where Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep confidently states that empathy is the sole factor that separates humans from replicants, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner questions this line of thinking, leaving the audience with a lot more to discuss on the true definition of sentience. In some cases, however, adapters can attempt to nail a part of their inspiration's message, but completely ignore other parts of it. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein still illustrates the irresponsibility of creation and the cost of ambition integral to Mary Shelley's novel, but the bittersweet, optimistic note it ends on contradicts the commentary on vengeance that makes the original so timeless. Level 2 is also where I'd put movies that add a message to a work that doesn't have one, whether that be a mechanics-based video game, a toy line, a theme park ride, or even a board game. Going from no message to a message is a change in message. Level 2 is fascinating because films that live here can either come off as frustrating misinterpretation or brilliant reinterpretation. These stories have the same hooks as the ones they're based on, but what they want the audience to walk away with by the time the credits roll is different. Sometimes it rocks, sometimes it doesn't. I use Level 3 for stories that deliver the same emotional message through a different concept. They look like original works at first glance, but they have the same message and blueprint as an older literary or cinematic work they're directly inspired by. On the surface, The Magnificent Seven, A Bug's Life, and Rebel Moon couldn't be more different. But when you notice they all tell the story of 7 ragtag warriors joining forces to protect the innocent from some sort of bully figure, you realize they're just reskins of the 7 Samurai. And that's what makes this tier fascinating. It suggests that some stories are so universally resonant they work in any world. The emotional conflict of Hamlet is so powerful it works just as well in the African savannah or Viking Iceland as it does in medieval Denmark. And the same can be said for so many other classic sagas. Level 3 is important as it reflects the time-honored practice of the same tales taking new forms with every voice that tells them that goes back to the dawn of storytelling. And because these movies maintain the same underlying ideas of the work they're inspired by, that's enough to get them higher than the lower two tiers. But because third level adaptations are only adaptations in a spiritual, indirect sense, they can't rank any higher in terms of faithfulness. Alright. So far, we've talked about adaptations that lack some combination of message and concept or even title when compared to the works that they're based on. Tier 4 is where things get frustrating. These movies have the same titles and concepts of the stories they're based on, and they take major creative liberties with the story. They attempt to reach the same message by the end, but the adjustments they make impact the plot in such a way that it weakens said message. The textbook definition of level 4 would be Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One. The novel succeeds at showing the dangers of shutting out reality around you, the importance of popular culture and society, and this idea that you can't save the world alone. The movie attempts arguing all those things, but because it never really leans into them to the degree the book does, they feel lost in translation. I can speak from experience here. I watched the movie roughly 20 times from the age of 10 to 13, and I didn't even comprehend the message until I finally read the book. However, a movie being level 4 doesn't immediately make it bad. I'd also use it for movies that deliver the source material's message successfully, even if they don't do it as well as the original story. Look at Scott Pilgrim. Edgar Wright's movie is a much faster, more action-packed interpretation of Brian Lee O'Malley's graphic novel, but it successfully teaches these lessons of learning to love yourself before trying to love others, and finding the confidence to confront your past in order to find your place in the world. But in the graphic novel, that growth feels much more earned when Scott's past is dissected directly via flashbacks, and the characters are given more room to breathe between the action sequences, allowing the message to come much more naturally. The best analogy to understand what I mean with level 4 is through the lens of argumentative essays. Let's say both the original work and the film adaptation are papers with the same prompt and thesis, but they select different evidence and reasoning to convey their point. The first essay, the original work, gets an A, as all its evidence is compelling and relevant. Meanwhile, the second essay, the adaptation, gets a C-, as the intentions are good and there's creativity on display, but the argument itself is ultimately unconvincing. And that's what defines level 4. It's brave, it's respectable, and sometimes very fun. But analytically, it's often disappointing. Level 5 adaptations closely follow the same plot as their source material, but there's a weird decision or two in there that makes it feel slightly off. These decisions can take many forms. It could be Zack Snyder deciding to change the nature of Adrian's plan at the end of Watchmen, having the resolution not hit as hard. Perhaps it could be Tim Burton grounding Sweeney Todd through leaving out the narrator chorus, therefore making the plot a bit harder to follow. These decisions never outright ruin a movie, but they're enough to make it slightly controversial among fans of the source material. I've mentally nicknamed this the "don't hype the anime if you haven't read the manga" tier, a very clear example of that being the Harry Potter movies from Goblet of Fire onward. I haven't read those books, so I had fun watching David Yates' adaptations. But my brother, who's a super fan of the novels, gets really frustrated by those movies, and when he's explained to me different things they changed and plot points they left out, I can start to understand why. This is the clunkiest tier on the entire list, as more creative license often needs to be taken for these stories to work as films. But because they stick to the source most of the time and only diverge to cut corners, they're caught between disloyal and uncreative. These films can absolutely work if they're your first exposure to an IP, but that's only because you won't really know what you're missing. Level 6 adaptations follow their stories very closely, almost beat for beat, and successfully deliver the same message. There might be a plot point or two that's dropped to save time, but all the essential stuff stays, and some scenes feel pretty one-to-one. To explain the difference between this level and the one below it, let's imagine different mediums or different languages, and adapting them is translating them to someone who only speaks the language of film. Level 5 is a pretty close interpretation of the original sentence, there just might be a word or two with a different cultural definition that makes its intent less clear. Meanwhile, level 6 is a direct translation that's easy easy to understand the meaning of, even with the cultural barrier. These films don't try to outshine their source material, nor do they fail to live up to it. They stand with it, creating the ultimate multimedia experience. They can be approached really excitingly, with directors like Zack Snyder and Pablo Berger recreating graphic novels panel for panel, or they can come off as really uncreative, with direct Shakespeare adaptations reciting the 500-year-old scripts word for word and doing nothing to embrace the visual nature of film as a medium. To me, however, the best recent example of a level 6 adaptation would be Project Hail Mary. Christopher Miller and Phil Lord take slight liberties with it, speeding up character development with new scenes and scaling down on a lot of Andy Weir's scientific jargon, but it follows the book, beat for beat. So closely, in fact, that some scenes are almost exactly like how I imagine them reading it. And, at the end of the day, it works with the same plot structure to effectively show how friendship gives us the courage to step outside of ourselves. Fans of the original content won't discredit level 6 adaptations. They'll embrace them as a beautiful way to experience their story in a new context. On the surface, this level seems like it should be on top, but there's one category I'd rank above it because it shows an even deeper level of understanding. Level 7 adaptations take dramatic creative liberties with how they approach the goals of their stories, but ultimately, they effectively deliver the same message and maintain the original essence. If Level 6 is studying for the test and memorizing the material, Level 7 is knowing the subject well enough to reteach it in your own words. These creative liberties can come in many forms. It could be a change in tone, a change in setting, a change in character relationships, or a change in structure, but they don't stop the message from getting across just as, if not more effectively, than it did in the original story. In the case of Return of the King, essence is maintained despite a different ending. Frodo and Sam return to a peaceful Shire, unlike the desolate one in the novel's following action. But by making Frodo's inability to return to the way things were internal rather than external, Peter Jackson successfully reiterates Tolkien's commentary on the invisible scars trauma leaves behind, despite greatly altering his plot. It's also in this tier you'll find most of the best comic book movies ever made. They very rarely stick to a specific storyline and alter personalities to fit actors, yet fundamentally, they accurately represent what these characters stand for. Let's talk Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn very much does his own thing with this world. He creates his own lineup, exaggerates character traits, and adds needle drops as an integral part of its identity. But he still maintains the magic of the comics by keeping this core narrative about a bunch of aliens who've lost everything forming a surrogate family. To me, however, the epitome of what Level 7 can be is Hamilton, the Broadway musical and its subsequent pro shot, which counts as a movie. Lin-Manuel Miranda was directly influenced and inspired by Ron Chernow's biography, Alexander Hamilton. Both works want the audience to learn the same lesson from Hamilton's life. You can't control what hand the universe deals you, but through hard work and doing the things you love, you can build something that outlives you and rise above your flaws. And they both convey that message to equal success. The only difference? Chernow does so academically with historical accuracy. Miranda does so musically with dramatic expression. Level 7 sits at the top because it's here that you get two stories in one. Two stories that are equally exciting, equally inspiring, and equally effective, just in beautifully different ways. It gets really easy to complain about a lack of original movies, but once in a blue moon, when adaptations this transcendent come along, you start to understand how important reiteration is to the art of storytelling, because this is where masterpieces thrive. A good movie doesn't always mean a good adaptation. There's levels to this, quite literally. And in regards to message, concept, title, and plot, the absence of any or all of these things can't hold back a director from making a great film. They're only limited by the talent they hold behind the camera and what it was about their source material that drew them in. The only question now is, where are the adaptations of tomorrow, such as The Odyssey, Supergirl, and Street Fighter, going to land on this scale? Let me know your predictions in the comments down below. Anyway, thanks again so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications so you can see when new videos drop. I have a lot of awesome stuff planned over these next few months that I'm really excited about, so it'd be awesome if y'all could see it. But anyway, that's gonna have to wrap it up. Thanks again. Until next time, YouTube, I will see you on the flip side.